So welcome everybody. Today I have the distinct privilege of talking with one of my really good friends, but he's more than that. He is a certified implementer for traction and a business coach. And so I have been working with Cesar for over several years at the law firm, and I've known him for longer, and I know how great of a guy he is. And he's really got that special touch and the balance between kicking you in the butt and making sure that you do what you need to do business-wise, but still being likable, believe it or not. I mean, it's a really nice balance of being very smart, in tune, keeping things on track, pushing you when you need to be pushed, but also, being jovial about it. And so I guess that's the longest intro ever. But Cesar, tell us more about you. Introduce yourself.
Hey, how are you, Brett? Thanks for having me. Yeah, so, I started my company when I was 24 years old. I'm an engineer, a process engineer by trade. I was in Procter & Gamble for 3 years in marketing. And then I decided to get married, move to a new country, and start a business all at the same time at 24. I started a food company. So we cooked and delivered meals to people in their office. It was at that time where we had to convince people it was convenient to have your meals delivered. Grew that business and started two other businesses in 2013, and realized that wasn't really my purpose on where I was at, and started facilitating coaching, and that's where I really love spending my time. So now I'm in Profit Recipe. It's my consulting firm, and I do EOS implementation, and I just got certified in that. So the certification title, which is the top level of the certifications there.
Okay, so let's unwind that a little bit. So you're not from the U.S., right? So you
originally from Venezuela, South America. Yes.
That's awesome. So you're born in another country, and you're another success story of an entrepreneur that comes here from another country, which is always fun to talk about. So then you start a food business, right? And you grew that to over $1 million in revenue. I mean, this was a successful food business. But then one day you said, I did it, I had fun with it, but that doesn't mean I have to spend my whole life doing it. And so you pivoted. So tell us about what that's like after you've poured so much of your heart and soul into a business, and then one day saying, look, I got to be honest with myself, it's just not my passion anymore.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to get there. I think, I had the entrepreneur syndrome of wearing all the hats and doing all the things, and doing the day-to-days. We grew the company. We were probably at 1.5 after 5 to 6 years of opening. And so it took us a little bit. I had no knowledge about the food industry, right? So I had no knowledge about how to do business in the US. So I had to kind of go through that growth curve and understand how to do business and the margins and all that stuff in the food industry. What I realized after 5 to 6 years is that, I had 27 people, working at Fit to Go, but I was doing still everything. I was wearing all the hats. I was running like a chicken without a head. And I think that's when I realized, this can't be what entrepreneurship is about, right? I need to start letting go. And I think that's when I read Traction and understood EOS and joined the Entrepreneurs Organization. And by doing that, it made me understand that I was not the right type of leader. I wasn't allowing people to grow. I wasn't allowing them to really perform their job. And I was really more micromanaging and making people do things the way I wanted to do things. So it was a transformational period for me as a leader of understanding what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. I think a lot of times we think we have a job in our business just because we started it. So through that transition, understanding that, I could create process systems and a culture of accountability that people could really elevate and take ownership, of what they needed to do. That's when I realized that, being a leader wasn't only telling people what to do, but it was more like getting the consensus and building a business that we could all work for. And, after a year or two of doing this, I got withdrawn from the business. So I wasn't doing the day-to-day anymore. So that's when my shiny object syndrome started of, what else can I start? What else can I do? Since my business wasn't requiring that much time for me. And that's where I started dabbling into different things and starting different businesses.
Hold on. I'm taking notes. Don't just tell people what to do all day, every day. To borrow a phrase from Traction, delegate and elevate. You said you were doing everything yourself, but just because you put in systems in a business and people now use systems, well, what does that mean? How do the systems run themselves? And how do you get out of wearing every hat? And when you start a business, you're running on adrenaline for a few months. I know I was for about 4 months. And then like,
Four
man,
months. Shoot, I was like years.
yeah. Well, no, I was still doing everything myself, but the
Yeah.
adrenaline wore off. And so I was just like,
Oh,
what gives here? Kind of like, you're saying this can't be what it's all about. And so having to learn how to not do everything yourself, because one, it could be out of fear of money. Like, I don't have any money, so I have to do everything myself. Or
yeah.
two, you're a control freak. Or three, you just don't know any better. You just don't know that it's okay to bring someone in to take things off your plate, because you're actually going to make more money that way. It's not going to cost you money. And
Yeah.
so, tell us about that.
I think the first key here, and it's following the EOS process too, is, it's structure. It's understanding who does what. And I think that's where I wasn't clear. Like, we had a team and everybody had their job title, but true accountability wasn't part of that. So I think creating a culture of accountability starts with understanding who does what exactly, who holds what role, and who's accountable for each thing, right? So back in the day, I thought I was accountable for everything because I was the owner, but it's not true. Like, salespeople should be accountable for revenue. Finance people should be accountable for cash. Operations people should be accountable for quality. So once I started understanding, okay, this is a structure and this is who is accountable for what, and once we started understanding the right team members, right, having the right people in the right seats, right? So it's developing the structure, understanding who sits where, but then also attracting people who are aligned with my values, aligned with my purpose. So creating a space where people I trust and people who I can trust, right, and I like and I trust, um, are attracted to working for us as well. They sit on the right seats, and then data would be the third piece, right? So it's structure, people, and then the data, making sure that you can trust, but then you need to verify, right? It's a Reaganism of
Yeah.
trust but verify, and you can trust a person all you want, but they need to perform. They need to make sure that we're doing what we need. So that combination of structure, people, data created a culture of accountability that allowed me to delegate and then elevate, right? And have people take on those positions. Um, so yeah, it took like 6 months to a year to really start seeing it. And, it started, but within 2 years, I only had one seat in my accountability chart, and that was it. Like, I didn't have to be operationally involved as much anymore.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's really where it starts to get fun, and entrepreneurship should be fun. At our law firm, our mission is to protect the economy one business at a time, because we believe that being an entrepreneur, that's what the America is all about, right? Like, we just talked about you coming from Venezuela and living the American dream, and you provide your own income, and that is just a cool story and what we protect. And owning a business should be fun. So there's an analogy though. You talk about right person, right seat, and I think innately people kind of get like, oh, that just means you're around the right people, and that is true, but it's deeper than that. And the part that I think most people miss is that it's a bus, and the bus is not just sitting there; it's going somewhere. So
Yeah.
you might be around people that complement each other, but do all those people know that if you got on that bus in LA, that the destination is New York? Or do some people think it's going to Chicago? Or do some people think it's going to Miami? And
And
so
that's,
creating that vision
oh yeah.
of, I want to be on this bus because I know where it's going. The person driving the bus or the owner has communicated where it's going. I'm not confused about where it's going or my role and how to get there, and my passion aligns. So I am having go back to the bus, just a fun time, because I know that I'm on the right bus. And I think that's
Yeah.
probably the part a lot of people miss.
And yeah, and that's a Jim Collins reference, good to great, and having the right people in the right bus. And I think what you're saying, and I think one of the things that your firm has done really well is communicate that vision and alignment in people. Like I walk into your office and I feel like I'm in a startup culture, right? Everybody's young, everybody's hungry, everybody's trying to, grow and improve themselves. And and there's a sense of humor where I didn't expect that walking into a law firm, right? And I feel that that's been kind of by design. You guys want that sense of humor. You want to do those things. And I feel that, it not only are you great at what you do, but you also have fun doing it. And as a client, it's great to be a business owner that people that can understand what business means like, right? So I think the vision piece is a critical vision, and it's also part of the system where, we can have all the people in the bus, but if we're not rowing all in the same direction, if we're not in the same line and aligned and a vision that's defined, well defined and shared by all, then we're all tugging and pushing on our different directions. So it'll be harder to get there for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely a piece of vision, culture, alignment that we need to make sure that we do.
And I think the frustration when you're a business owner and you just have that one employee that you just like, they're not part of the team. They're not in it because, really they're not aligned with the mission. There's some mission out there that they're going to be good at and jump into, but just because someone's at your firm or your business and they're not passionate, it's okay to let that person go because they need to realize that there's something out there for them as well. And it works both ways, alignment. I mean,
I think that's true with employees, and that's true with vendors and customers. That's true with everything. I think what you're referring to is a lot in regards to core values and alignment and fit, I feel. So if you understand what you're good at and how you're good at doing things, then you can attract people that like the way you do things and that are attracted and align and fit in the way you do things. So it doesn't matter how skilled a person is, how great they are at their job, if they don't fit with the culture you have, if they don't fit on how, with culture we talk about how, the behaviors, right? If they don't fit with those behaviors, then they're never going to be happy, right? And it's doing your company and them a disservice. They could be happy in a different type of environment. Every company has a completely different culture. Like no company's alike. And I think that once you understand that, even with customers, right? There's customers that want you to do things this way, and you're like, we do things this way. So it doesn't matter if I bend over backwards, do triple flips, and do anything. Sometimes it just causes misalignment. So we need to understand what we're good at and expand that superpower in the people who appreciate the way we do things.
Yeah, no, such a good point, Cesar. Let's talk about, so you build Fit to Go, you learned a lot of the lessons, and then you transitioned, right? So
Yep.
I remember when I first read Traction, it was before you were a traction coach, and I couldn't get enough of the book. I listened to it, and then I bought it, and I'm taking the quizzes, and I'm just, you can read the E-Myth, and it makes the bigger point, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And
Yep.
Traction was just mind-blowing to me in that way. So you eventually stepped out of Fit to Go a little bit or completely, you're still an owner, but in terms of the day-to-day, and you moved into Traction. So tell us what that was like.
I started working less and less on the operational side. So I started dabbling into different things. I started a SaaS company that didn't go anywhere. It was an Uber Eats before Uber Eats. So when Uber Eats came out, I'm like, but that's when I started speaking and I started facilitating, and I started coaching different restaurants and helping them deliver and all that. And that's when I realized, as a business owner, I read so many books, E-Myth, Rockefeller Habits, Scaling Up, Traction, Rocket Fuel, all these books, Good to Great. And I always grabbed all these concepts and I was trying to implement them my way. And I realized that there were two things that were wrong with this. The first one was, it was me implementing them, because as an owner, even though I think I'm a great facilitator and I'm a great implementer in my own company, I can't, because I have, I'm emotionally attached to it. And also I play this part where people can't be open and honest. And if I'm facilitating and I'm also the owner, it's hard for me to be detached. So the first piece was that a lot of it depended on me, and centralized and how I fit it. But the second piece is where I love EOS and Traction the most, is that it has a simplified way of implementing it. It tells you step one is this, step two is this, Step 3 is this. So when we hired our implementer, it was easier for us. It took us 6 months to develop something that I was trying to do it by myself for 2.5 years, right? Because I was just grabbing pieces and putting them as I could and mixing different things and adding this and that. But it wasn't a consistent process that I think Gino Whitman did an amazing job in simplifying the process of this is A, B, C, D, do it this way and it works, right? And it's a proven process that makes it simple. And it doesn't matter what type of company you are, if it's your retail, service, profit, nonprofit, it works exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, from all the books and all the things, this was great at capturing all those, but putting them in a proven system.
I mean, look, you've been successful as an entrepreneur. Now you're really successful as a Traction. I'm going to mess this up, but certified implementer. It's the highest certification within Traction system.
Yeah.
Your business is growing, and here you are again helping other business owners. So you must be having the time of your life, right?
You know what? Yeah, and that ties into purpose, right? So I feel that I always was trying to find. I went into a food business because I saw an opportunity. It wasn't something I was drawn to by purpose. And I think creating a business that worked for me allowed me to go and find myself, go and find what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I think going through that process was really enlightening for me in finding what my true passion was, what my true purpose was. And now most of my decisions I make based on that filtering mechanism. So now I just know what to say yes to and what to say no to. And having a sense of purpose. Now I feel I don't work any day of my life, and my wife hates me for this, but it's like, I could work all day. I don't care. Like, I'm having a blast on what I'm doing. So, and that's what I want for everyone. That's kind of my purpose here, is to help others live this life, the life they want to live. So I think a lot of times, and while I was writing the blog, there's two types of entrepreneur, right? The natural, I had a lemonade stand when I was a kid, and I always wanted this drive for independence, and I wanted, this drive for being self-sufficient. And I never saw myself as an employee. So that's one type of entrepreneur, right? And then there's the accidental opportunity entrepreneur, where they see a gap or they're going through a crisis, and then they bump into this, and then they go through it. And I think both of them can be successful. I think what a lot of people get wrong is the energy it takes, right, to start a business. And I think that's what's a little underplayed on this life of an entrepreneur. Is great. It's fun. It's successful, but it's all about understanding what you're getting yourself into, and double the time it's going to take and double the money it's going to take of whatever you think it is. And that's kind of what I realized going into it and going into my other two businesses, is it always takes more time, it always takes more money, and it always takes more energy. And while grass is greener on the other side, a lot of people around you are doing great. And my friends were scaling up that corporate ladder, and I was jealous. I'm like, oh my God, when am I going to be there? And it just created that fire even more. So it's, keeping the mentality of an understanding that it is a lifestyle, but it takes some effort and some time. And I think the more you go through it, the easier it gets with your second and third businesses, right? So it's what I call the evolution, the entrepreneurial evolution, right?
Interesting. I like that term. And it's important what you said, because two things. One, stress is caused between your expectation versus reality. So you thought something would be one way, but it's another. And to coincide with that, number two, the biggest community afflicted with anxiety and depression is the entrepreneurial community. Yeah. And so maybe the reason is because we expect I'm going to work for myself and everything's going to be perfect and great, when in reality, there's a lot of bad days, there's a lot of long nights, and it can be hard at times. So maybe if we're, it's nice to be positive, and we believe in being positive, of course, but also being realistic and letting people know that it is difficult. There are hard times, but there's resources to help you get through it. Maybe a little bit more of your messaging in terms of, hey, there's different types of entrepreneurs, there's different types of journeys. It's okay if everything's not perfect from day one. Don't get down on yourself. Maybe that message needs to be out there more.
Yeah. And I think also surround yourself with peers, people that can help you, people who have gone through it, who understand what you're going through. I think being an entrepreneur sometimes gets a little lonely, because all of the thoughts are in your mind, and you don't know, how to react to certain things. And being part of the entrepreneurs organizations has helped me do that, where I have peers of people that have gone through it, and they've gone through different experiences. The first time I got a lawsuit, I walked into the room and almost everybody had gotten a lawsuit. So it made me feel better, misery is good in company. What's the saying?
Yeah, yeah. Misery loves company.
Misery loves company. So it's good to surround yourself with people that understand you and help you go through these times, right?
Listen, man, you're such a fun, easy friend to talk to. I could do this all day, but probably cut it off here. I think we probably went on for much longer than you and I feel like. So I look forward to the next time I can see you in person, whenever that may be. And I'll definitely see you again virtually very soon. Just want to thank you for joining us. It was a really, really good conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett.